Why Alien Students Call Earth a Death World, Part 1. The night was quiet in the Nevada desert. The stars above sparkled like tiny diamonds scattered across a black canvas. The air was cool, and the only sound came from the soft rustling of dry grass as the wind swept through. Suddenly, the stillness was broken by a low hum that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. A faint glow appeared in the sky, growing brighter with each passing second. It wasn't a shooting star or an airplane. It was something else entirely. A sleek silver spacecraft descended silently, its surface reflecting the moonlight. The ship was small but advanced, designed for exploration rather than combat. Inside, a group of alien students sat nervously, their large, almond-shaped eyes scanning the monitors around them. They were here on a mission, to study Earth, a planet that had earned the ominous nickname Deathworld. None of them fully understood why it had been given such a title, but they were determined to find out. Their instructor, Calith, stood at the front of the cabin, his tall, slender frame exuding calm authority. His skin shimmered faintly, a trait shared by all members of his species. He turned to face the students, his voice steady and reassuring. "This is your first field assignment," he said. "Remember, we are here to observe, not interfere. Earth's ecosystem is complex and unpredictable. Stay alert and follow my instructions carefully." Among the students, two stood out. Liren, a young female with curious eyes, leaned forward eagerly, her fingers tapping against the armrest of her seat. She had always been fascinated by Earth's history and culture, devouring every piece of information she could find. To her, this mission was more than just a learning experience. It was a chance to see firsthand what made Earth so unique. Varnock, on the other hand, was less enthusiastic. A skeptical male with a sharp jawline, he crossed his arms over his chest and frowned. "I don't see what the big deal is," he muttered under his breath. "How dangerous can this place really be? We have technology far superior to anything humans possess." His confidence bordered on arrogance, but no one dared challenge him. After all, Varnock had always been the top student in their class. The ship touched down gently on the desert floor. The students prepared to disembark. Using holographic disguises, they transformed their appearances to blend in with humans. Liren's shimmering skin became smooth and pale, while Varnock's angular features softened into something more human-like. Their clothing shifted too, adapting to match the casual style of Earth's inhabitants. When they stepped outside, they looked like any other group of travelers, except for the subtle flicker of light around their edges, a side effect of the disguise technology. Their destination was Willow Creek, a small town nestled between rolling hills and dense forests. It had been chosen because of its apparent tranquility, making it an ideal location for observation. As they approached the town, the aliens marveled at the simplicity of human life. Houses lined the streets, some painted bright colors, others weathered by time. Cars drove past, honking occasionally, and people strolled along sidewalks, chatting and laughing. To Liren, it all seemed so vibrant and alive, but not everything was as peaceful as it appeared. In the center of town, a woman named Emily Dawson hurried down the street, clutching a notebook tightly in her hands. Emily was a journalist, known for her determination to uncover the truth behind strange events. Recently, there had been reports of disappearances in the area, people vanishing without a trace. Some blamed wild animals, others whispered about supernatural forces, but Emily suspected there was more to the story. She noticed the newcomers almost immediately. There was something odd about them, though she couldn't quite put her finger on it. The way they moved, perhaps, or the slight hesitation in their speech. Still, she dismissed her suspicions as paranoia and continued on her way. Little did she know, those strangers would soon become key players in unraveling the mystery of Willow Creek. That evening, the group set up camp near an abandoned factory on the outskirts of town. The building loomed ominously against the darkening sky, its windows shattered and walls covered in graffiti. Calith chose the location deliberately, hoping to avoid drawing attention from the locals. "Stay close," he instructed the students, "and whatever you do, don't wander off alone." Despite his warning, curiosity got the better of Liren. As the others settled around a makeshift fire, She slipped away unnoticed, drawn by the eerie atmosphere of the factory. The closer she got, the more unsettling it became. Shadows danced across the ground, cast by twisted metal beams and overgrown weeds. Strange noises echoed in the distance, scratching, scurrying, whispers that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Liren froze when she saw them. Glowing eyes peered at her from the darkness, watching her every move. Her heart raced, though her species didn't experience fear in the same way humans did. She tried to rationalize what she was seeing. A trick of the light, maybe, or some kind of nocturnal animal. But deep down, she knew it was something else entirely. Something unnatural. Before she could investigate further, a loud crack split the air, startling her. She spun around and sprinted back to the camp, her mind racing with questions. What had she seen? And why did it feel like the shadows themselves were alive? When she returned, breathless and wide-eyed, the others bombarded her with questions. Varnock scoffed at her account, dismissing it as nerves or faulty sensors in her disguise. "You're letting your imagination run wild," he said, rolling his eyes. "There's nothing out there that can hurt us." Caleth, however, wasn't so quick to dismiss her concerns. He had read the reports from previous expeditions, accounts of unexplained phenomena and encounters with hostile entities. If even half of those stories were true, they were in greater danger than any of them realized. As the night wore on, the group huddled closer together, the warmth of the fire doing little to ease their unease. Outside the circle of light, the Tao forest seemed to press in on them, its silence heavy and oppressive. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, its mournful cry sending shivers down their spines. Unbeknownst to them, they were being watched. Hidden among the trees, glowing eyes blinked slowly, observing their every move. Whatever lurked in the shadows wasn't just curious. It was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. For now, the aliens remained unaware of the danger lurking just beyond their reach. But as the hours ticked by, it became clear that their mission to understand Earth would test them in ways they never imagined. This was no ordinary world. It was a death world, and survival would require more than just advanced technology. It would demand courage, teamwork, and a willingness to confront the unknown. And so, beneath the vast, star-filled sky, the stage was set for an adventure that would change their lives forever. Why Alien Students Call Earth a Death World, Part 2. The night grew darker, and the temperature dropped sharply. The alien students sat close to the fire, their faces illuminated by its flickering light. Liren's hands trembled slightly as she recounted what she had seen near the factory. "There were eyes," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They glowed in the dark, and they were watching me." Varnock rolled his eyes again, dismissing her words with a wave of his hand. "You're overreacting," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "Even if there was something out there, it couldn't possibly harm us. Our technology is far superior to anything on this planet." Caleth, however, didn't share Varnock's confidence. His expression was serious as he listened to Liren's account. He stood up and walked a few steps away from the group, pulling out a small device from his pocket. It was a scanner, designed to detect life forms and analyze environmental data. As he swept it around the area, the device emitted a series of soft beeps. Caleth frowned. Something wasn't right. "Stay here," he instructed the students firmly. "I need to check the ship's database for more information about this region." Without waiting for a response, he turned and headed toward the spacecraft, leaving the group alone. As soon as Caleth disappeared into the darkness, an uneasy silence settled over the camp. The fire crackled softly, but the sound did little to ease the tension. Ryan, one of the quieter students, glanced nervously at the trees surrounding them. "Do you think we should have told him about the noises?" he asked hesitantly. "What noises?" Mira, another student, replied, her voice tinged with irritation. "You mean the wind? Or maybe the animals? This is Earth, not some haunted moon." Ryan opened his mouth to respond but thought better of it. He didn't want to sound foolish, especially in front of Varnock, who already seemed annoyed by the whole situation. Instead, he stared into the fire, trying to ignore the prickling sensation at the back of his neck. Meanwhile, Emily Dawson was still in town, poring over old newspaper clippings and photographs in her small apartment. She had spent hours researching the disappearances, piecing together fragments of information that painted a disturbing picture. Most of the victims had last been seen near the abandoned factory, just like the strange newcomers she had noticed earlier. Could there be a connection? Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden knock at the door. Startled, she grabbed a flashlight and cautiously approached the entrance. Peering through the peephole, she saw no one. Frowning, she opened the door and stepped outside, shining the light around. The street was empty, but something caught her eye, a faint distortion in the air, almost like heat waves rising from asphalt. She blinked, unsure if she was imagining things, and returned inside, shaking her head. Back at the camp, the atmosphere was growing tenser by the minute. Liren hugged her knees to her chest, her wide eyes scanning the shadows beyond the firelight. Varnock, on the other hand, leaned back against a log, pretending to be relaxed. But even he couldn't completely hide the unease creeping into his expression. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the night. Everyone froze, their heads snapping toward the source of the sound. From the edge of the forest emerged a pack of feral dogs, their fur matted and their eyes wild with hunger. They moved slowly at first, circling the camp with predatory precision. Saliva dripped from their bared teeth as they snarled, their muscles coiled like springs ready to pounce. "Stay calm," Varnock said, though his voice betrayed a hint of panic. He reached for the non-lethal energy pulse device strapped to his belt, a standard tool used for self-defense. The others followed his lead, gripping their own devices tightly. The dogs lunged forward, closing the distance between them and the aliens in seconds. Chaos erupted as the students fired pulses of energy, sending bursts of bright light and harmless shocks toward the attackers. The dogs yelped and retreated momentarily, but their aggression only intensified. One of them broke through the line of defense, aiming straight for Liren. She screamed as the dog sank its teeth into her leg, tearing through the holographic disguise and biting deep into her flesh. Pain shot through her body, sharp and overwhelming. Varnock reacted quickly, blasting the animal with a concentrated pulse that sent it sprawling backward. The rest of the pack hesitated, then turned tail and fled into the forest, disappearing into the darkness. Liren collapsed to the ground, clutching her injured leg. Her skin shimmered faintly where the bite had torn through the disguise, revealing her true form beneath. Blood oozed from the wound, but it wasn't red. It was a strange, iridescent color that pulsed faintly under the firelight. The others gathered around her, their faces pale with shock. "We need to get her to the ship," Mira said urgently. "Now!" Varnock nodded, guilt gnawing at him as he helped lift Liren to her feet. Together they carried her toward the spacecraft, moving as quickly as they could without causing further injury. When they reached the ship, Calith was already waiting for them, his face grim. "What happened?" he demanded, rushing to assist. "She was attacked," Ryan explained breathlessly. "By one of those creatures." Calith examined the wound carefully, his brow furrowing with concern. "This isn't just a bite," he said after a moment. "It's infected with something. Something highly adaptive. We need to stabilize her immediately." Inside the ship, the medical bay hummed with activity as Calith worked tirelessly to treat Liren. He applied a series of advanced treatments, but the infection resisted every attempt to neutralize it. The wound began spreading across her leg, changing color rapidly and pulsating with an unnatural rhythm. "This shouldn't be possible," Calith muttered, frustration evident in his voice. "Earth's organisms are evolving faster than our countermeasures can adapt." The other students watched helplessly as Liren writhed in pain, her breathing shallow and labored. Varnock clenched his fists, anger and guilt swirling inside him. He had dismissed Liren's warnings earlier, and now she was paying the price for his arrogance. Outside the ship, the forest remained eerily silent. Whatever had driven the dogs to attack wasn't finished yet. Somewhere in the shadows, glowing eyes blinked slowly, observing the spacecraft with cold, calculating intelligence. Emily Dawson, meanwhile, found herself drawn back to the factory. She couldn't shake the feeling that answers lay hidden within, its crumbling walls. Armed with her flashlight and a camera, she ventured inside, navigating the maze of rusted machinery and broken glass. The air was thick with dust and the floor creaked ominously beneath her feet. In one corner of the basement, she discovered a series of old test tubes and vials, their contents long since dried up. Scattered papers littered the ground, detailing experiments conducted decades ago. The notes spoke of attempts to harness Earth's adaptive biology for military purposes, experiments that had gone horribly wrong. As Emily snapped photos of the evidence, she felt a chill run down her spine. Something wasn't right. The silence around her felt too heavy, too deliberate. Slowly, she turned off her flashlight, letting her eyes adjust to the darkness. That's when she saw them. Glowing eyes, dozens of them staring back at her from the shadows. Her heart pounded as she backed away, fumbling to turn the flashlight back on. When the beam cut through the darkness, the eyes vanished, leaving her alone once again. Shaken but determined, she gathered her belongings and hurried out of the factory, unaware that she had stumbled upon the truth behind Earth's deadly reputation. Back at the ship, Kalith finally managed to stabilize Liren, though the infection remained a persistent threat. The experience left the students shaken, particularly Varnock, who realized how wrong he had been to underestimate Earth's dangers. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, the group prepared to leave the camp behind and venture deeper into the mystery of Willow Creek. None of them knew what awaited them next, but one thing was certain. Earth was far more dangerous and fascinating than any of them had ever imagined. Why alien students call Earth a death world. Part 3. The morning sun rose slowly over the desert, casting long shadows across the ground. The alien students gathered inside their spacecraft, their expressions heavy with worry. Liren lay on a medical bed in the center of the room, her breathing shallow but steady. The infection in her leg had slowed its spread, thanks to Kalith's efforts, but it wasn't gone. The wound still pulsed faintly, its strange colors shifting like an oil slick under the light. Kalith stood nearby, reviewing the data from his scans. His face was pale, even for someone of his species, and his movements were tense. "This organism is unlike anything we've encountered before," he said, his voice low and serious. "It adapts faster than our treatments can counteract. We need more information if we're going to save Liren." Varnock clenched his fists, guilt gnawing at him. He had mocked Liren's fears and dismissed her warnings, and now she was suffering because of it. For the first time in his life, he felt truly powerless. "What can we do?" he asked, his tone softer than usual. Kalith turned to face the group, his eyes sharp and determined. "We need samples from the source of the infection, the factory. There might be something there that can help us understand this organism better. But we must be careful. Whatever attacked Liren isn't just dangerous, it's intelligent." The students exchanged uneasy glances. None of them wanted to return to the factory, but they knew they didn't have a choice. Liren's life depended on it. Varnock stepped forward, surprising everyone. "I'll go," he said firmly. "It's my fault we're in this situation. I should be the one to fix it." Kalith nodded, though his expression remained grim. "Take Ryan and Mira with you. Stick together and don't take any unnecessary risks." As the three students prepared to leave, Emily Dawson was already making her way back to the factory. She had spent the night poring over the photos she had taken, unable to shake the feeling that she was on to something big. Her mind raced with questions. What had those glowing eyes belonged to? And why did the experiments in the basement seem so wrong? When she arrived at the factory, she noticed fresh footprints in the dirt near the entrance. They weren't human. They were too large and oddly shaped. Frowning, she followed them cautiously, her flashlight casting shaky beams of light into the gloom. The air inside was colder than before, and the silence pressed against her ears like a weight. Meanwhile, Varnock, Ryan, and Mira approached the factory from the opposite side. They moved quietly, their holographic disguises blending seamlessly with the environment. Varnock carried a scanner similar to the one Kalith had used earlier, while Ryan and Mira held energy pulse devices at the ready. They entered through a broken window, stepping carefully over shards of glass. The interior was darker than they remembered, the daylight barely penetrating the thick layers of dust and grime. Varnock activated the scanner, its soft beeping filling the silence. "There's something here," he whispered, squinting at the screen. "Biological readings, strong ones." Before they could investigate further, a noise echoed through the building, a faint scraping sound, like claws dragging across metal. Ryan froze, his grip tightening on his device. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice trembling. Mira nodded, her eyes darting around the room. "Stay close," she said, her voice firm despite her fear. "Whatever it is, it's not alone." The group pressed on, following the scanner's readings deeper into the factory. They soon found themselves in the basement, where the air was damp and heavy with the smell of decay. Broken test tubes and scattered papers littered the floor, remnants of the experiments Emily had discovered earlier. Varnock knelt to examine one of the vials, its surface coated with a sticky residue. "This could be what infected Liren," he said, holding it up to the light. As they collected samples, they failed to notice Emily watching them from the shadows. She had seen their strange movements and heard their hushed voices. When she stepped into the light, her flashlight trained on them, they froze. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Varnock sighed and lowered his disguise, revealing his true form. "We're not from here," he admitted, his voice calm but cautious. "And we need your help." Emily blinked, unsure if she was dreaming. The creature before her looked nothing like a human, yet it spoke English fluently. "You're aliens?" she asked, lowering her flashlight slightly. "Yes," Varnock replied. "My name is Varnock. This is Ryan and Mira. We came to study Earth, but we've run into trouble. One of our group was attacked by something out here, and we think the answers are in this factory." Emily hesitated, her mind racing. She had always been curious about the unknown, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. Finally, she nodded. "All right," she said. "I'll help, but you'd better tell me everything." With Emily's assistance, the group worked quickly, gathering as many samples as they could. She pointed out areas she had explored earlier, including a hidden room filled with old computers and monitors. The screens flickered to life when Varnock touched them, displaying grainy footage of experiments gone horribly wrong. In one clip, scientists could be seen injecting animals with strange substances, their bodies convulsing violently before collapsing. "This explains a lot," Emily muttered, her stomach churning. They were trying to create weapons using Earth's biology. Something must have escaped. Varnock's expression darkened. "That would explain the glowing eyes," he said. "Whatever they created, it's still out there." As they prepared to leave, a loud crash echoed through the factory. The group spun around, their hearts pounding. From the shadows emerged a massive figure, its body covered in matted fur and its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. It growled, baring rows of razor-sharp teeth, and lunged toward them. "Run!" Varnock shouted, firing an energy pulse at the creature. The blast sent it stumbling backward, but it recovered quickly, its movements unnervingly fast. The group sprinted toward the exit, Emily keeping pace despite her fear. Behind them, the creature gave chase, its claws tearing through walls and machinery with ease. They reached the main floor just as the roof began to collapse, weakened by years of neglect. Dust and debris rained down, forcing them to dodge and weave through the chaos. Finally, they burst into the open air, gasping for breath. The creature hesitated at the threshold, its glowing eyes narrowing as it watched them retreat. Then, with a final snarl, it disappeared back into the shadows. Back at the ship, Kalith greeted them with relief, though his expression hardened when he saw the state they were in. "What happened?" he asked sharply. "There's no time to explain," Varnock replied, handing over the samples. "Just analyze these now." While Kalith worked, Emily sat with the students, listening intently as they explained their mission and the dangers they had faced. She couldn't believe how much she had learned in such a short time. Earth, it seemed, was far more complex and deadly than anyone had realized. Eventually, Calith emerged from the lab, his expression a mix of frustration and hope. "The samples confirm what we suspected," he said. "This organism is highly adaptive, capable of evolving rapidly to resist external threats. But I've managed to synthesize an antidote. It's risky, but it's our only chance." With the antidote ready, they administered it to Liren, watching anxiously as her condition stabilized. The pulsing wound began to fade, its colors dimming until they disappeared entirely. Liren opened her eyes, weak but alive, and smiled faintly at her friends. Though the immediate danger had passed, the experience left the group shaken. They had come to Earth seeking knowledge, but they had found something far more profound: respect for the planet's unpredictable power. As they prepared to leave, Emily stood outside the ship, watching them silently. "Thank you," Varnock said, stepping forward. "Without your help, we wouldn't have made it." Emily nodded, her mind buzzing with questions. "Will I remember this?" she asked. Calith shook his head. "For your safety, and ours, we'll need to erase your memories of us. But know this: Earth is a remarkable world. Dangerous, yes, but also full of wonder." As the ship lifted off, Emily felt a strange sense of loss, though she couldn't explain why. She stared up at the sky, wondering if she had dreamed the entire encounter. But deep down, she knew the truth. Earth was a death world, and its mysteries were far from solved. Why Alien Students Call Earth a Death World, Part 4. The spacecraft hummed softly as it ascended into the sky, leaving behind the dusty desert and the small town of Willow Creek. Inside, the alien students sat in silence, their thoughts heavy with everything they had experienced. Liren rested on a medical bed, her strength slowly returning after the antidote had worked its way through her system. Though she was out of immediate danger, the memory of the glowing eyes and the relentless infection lingered in her mind. Varnock stared out of the window, watching as Earth grew smaller and smaller below them. His confidence, once unshakable, had been replaced by humility. For the first time, he truly understood what it meant to respect an unfamiliar world. Ryan and Mira exchanged quiet glances, their expressions reflecting a mix of relief and awe. They had come to study Earth, but they had learned far more than they had anticipated. Calith stood at the front of the cabin, his hands clasped behind his back. He turned to face the group, his voice calm but firm. "This mission has taught us something important," he began. "Earth is not dangerous because of its technology or its weapons. It is dangerous because of its unpredictability. Every corner of this planet holds secrets, some beautiful, others deadly." Liren nodded slowly, her voice soft but steady. "I never imagined Earth could be so alive," she said. "It's like the planet itself fights back when it feels threatened." Varnock sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. "I underestimated it," he admitted. "I thought we were invincible because of our knowledge and tools. But Earth showed me how wrong I was." Calith smiled faintly. "That's the lesson you needed to learn," he said. "No matter how advanced we are, there will always be worlds that challenge us, and that's a good thing. It reminds us to stay curious, to stay humble." As the ship continued its journey into space, Emily Dawson stood alone in the Nevada desert, staring up at the stars. She didn't remember the aliens or their spacecraft, but she felt a strange sense of unease, as though something important had slipped through her fingers. Her notebook lay open in her hand, filled with sketches and notes about the factory and the glowing eyes. Though she couldn't recall why, she knew the answers were close, hidden somewhere in the shadows of Willow Creek. Back aboard the spacecraft, Calith gathered the students for one final discussion before they returned home. "We came here to understand why Earth is called a death world," he said. "And now we know. It's not just because of the creatures or the diseases, it's because of the balance between creation and destruction. Earth is a place where life thrives, but it also demands respect. Those who ignore that balance pay the price." Mira raised her hand hesitantly. Do you think humans realize how dangerous their planet is? She asked. Calith paused, considering the question. Some do, he replied, but many don't. Humans are still learning about their own world, just as we are learning about the universe. That's why we must share what we've discovered, not to frighten them, but to help them understand. Varnock leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. What happens if humans continue experimenting with Earth's biology? He asked. What if they create something even worse? Calith's gaze darkened. Then Earth will become even more dangerous, not just for humans, but for anyone who sets foot on it. That's why it's crucial for us to monitor their progress, and intervene if necessary. The conversation shifted as the students reflected on their own roles in the mission. Liren spoke about her fascination with Earth's resilience, while Ryan expressed admiration for the planet's ability to adapt. Mira, ever the pragmatist, focused on the lessons they could apply to their own world. Varnock, however, remained quiet, his mind replaying the events of the past few days. Finally, Calith spoke again, his tone gentle but firm. Remember this experience, he said. Carry it with you as you continue your studies. Earth may be a death world, but it's also a place of wonder. It reminds us that survival isn't just about strength, it's about understanding. The spacecraft reached its destination, a massive orbital station orbiting a distant star. As the students disembarked, they were greeted by their peers, eager to hear about their mission. Calith allowed them to share their story, emphasizing the importance of respecting Earth's complexity and unpredictability. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Emily Dawson continued her investigation, driven by a lingering curiosity she couldn't explain. She wrote articles about the disappearances in Willow Creek, piecing together clues from the factory and the surrounding area. Though she didn't remember the aliens, her work hinted at the truth about the experiments, the glowing eyes, and the dangers lurking in the shadows. One evening, as she sat at her desk typing up her latest findings, she noticed something strange. A faint distortion in the air, almost like heat waves rising from asphalt. She blinked, unsure if she was imagining things, and shook her head. When she looked again, the distortion was gone. Far above Earth, the alien students prepared for their next mission. Liren gazed out of a window, her eyes fixed on the distant blue dot that was Earth. Do you think we'll ever go back? She asked quietly. Varnock joined her, his expression thoughtful. Maybe, he replied. But if we do, we'll be ready. Calith approached them, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. Earth taught us a valuable lesson, he said, and it's one we'll carry with us wherever we go. The universe is vast, and every world has its own challenges. But as long as we remain curious and respectful, we'll find a way to survive and thrive. As the spacecraft disappeared into the stars, the phrase Deathworld took on new
meaning. To the alien students, it wasn't just a label. It was a reminder of Earth's raw power, its beauty, and its dangers.
And though they had left the planet behind, its lessons would stay with them forever. Emily Dawson, meanwhile, closed her laptop and stepped outside, looking up at the night sky. She didn't know why, but she felt a strange connection to the stars, as though they held secrets waiting to be uncovered. Little did she know, her encounter with the unknown had only just begun. Why alien students call Earth a death world. Part 5. The spacecraft drifted silently through the vast emptiness of space, its engines humming softly as it carried the alien students toward their home planet. Inside, the mood was reflective. The group sat together in the common area, their holographic disguises deactivated, revealing their true forms once again. Liren rested comfortably now, her strength almost fully restored, though the memory of the infection still lingered in her mind like a shadow. She glanced at Varnock, who sat across from her, his expression distant but thoughtful. I keep thinking about what we saw, Liren said, breaking the silence. Those glowing eyes, they weren't just animals. They were something else entirely. Varnock nodded slowly, his voice quieter than usual. I thought I knew everything there was to know about survival, he admitted. But Earth showed me how wrong I was. It's not just about being stronger or smarter. It's about understanding the rules of the world you're in. Mira leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. Do you think humans realize how dangerous their experiments are? She asked. Back in that factory, it felt like they were playing with forces they didn't fully understand. Ryan chimed in, his tone cautious. Maybe they do understand, he suggested. But they don't care. Humans seem willing to take risks if it means gaining power or knowledge. Kalith, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. That's why Earth is so dangerous, he said. It's not just the creatures or the diseases. It's the choices humans make. Their curiosity drives them to push boundaries, sometimes without considering the consequences. Liren tilted her head, her large eyes filled with wonder. But isn't that what makes them special, she asked? Their ability to create and explore even when it's risky? Kalith smiled faintly. Yes, he replied. That's exactly what makes them special and dangerous. Humans live on the edge of chaos and order. Their planet reflects that balance. The conversation shifted as the students discussed their next steps. Kalith explained that their findings would be shared with their leaders, who would decide whether further intervention was necessary. We've gathered enough data to warn others about Earth's dangers, he said, but we also need to respect its mysteries. Not every question needs an answer. As the hours passed, the spacecraft approached their home planet, a shimmering orb of silver and blue, surrounded by rings of icy debris. The sight filled the students with a mix of relief and nostalgia. They had left as curious explorers and returned as seasoned survivors, their perspectives forever changed by their encounter with Earth. On Earth, Emily Dawson continued her work, driven by a determination she couldn't fully explain. Though her memories of the aliens had been erased, fragments of their presence lingered in her mind like half-forgotten dreams. She found herself drawn back to the factory, searching for answers to questions she couldn't quite articulate. One evening, as she sifted through old documents in the basement, she stumbled upon a hidden compartment beneath a pile of rubble. Inside, she discovered a journal belonging to one of the scientists who had worked there decades ago. Its pages were filled with frantic scribbles and sketches, diagrams of strange creatures, notes about failed experiments, and warnings scrawled in bold letters. Do not release. Emily's hands trembled as she flipped through the journal. The scientist's words painted a chilling picture of ambition gone awry. They had been trying to harness Earth's adaptive biology to create weapons capable of evolving faster than any defense. But something had gone wrong. The experiments had escaped, spreading into the surrounding area and mutating beyond control. She snapped photos of the journal and carefully tucked it into her bag, her mind racing. This was the story she had been chasing, the truth behind the disappearances and the glowing eyes. But as she climbed the stairs to leave, she felt a familiar chill in the air. The shadows seemed darker, heavier, as though the building itself was alive. Outside, the night was eerily quiet. Emily quickened her pace, her flashlight casting long beams of light across the ground. She reached her car and fumbled with the keys, her heart pounding. Just as she opened the door, she heard it, a low growl coming from the trees nearby. Her breath caught in her throat as glowing eyes appeared in the darkness, watching her. They blinked slowly, their gaze cold and calculating. For a moment, she froze, unable to move. Then, with a surge of adrenaline, she jumped into the car and slammed the door shut. The engine roared to life, and she sped away, glancing nervously at the rearview mirror. The eyes were gone, but the feeling of being watched stayed with her all the way home. Back aboard the spacecraft, the students prepared for their final debriefing before landing. Kalith gathered them in the main cabin, his expression serious but kind. "You've done well," he said. "This mission tested you in ways none of us could have predicted. But remember, the lessons you've learned aren't just about Earth. They're about yourselves." Varnock nodded, his guilt replaced by a newfound sense of responsibility. "I'll never underestimate another world again," he promised. "And I'll always listen to my instincts, and to others." Liren smiled faintly, her curiosity undimmed despite everything she had endured. "I hope we get to visit Earth again someday," she said. "There's so much more to learn." Calith chuckled softly. "Perhaps," he replied. "But for now, focus on sharing what you've discovered. Your experiences will help others understand the importance of respect and caution." As the spacecraft descended toward their home planet, the students gazed out the windows, watching as the familiar landscape came into view. Towering crystal spires rose from the ground, shimmering in the light of their sun. Rivers of liquid light flowed between cities, connecting communities with a beauty that rivaled Earth's own natural wonders. But even as they marveled at the sight, their thoughts remained on the blue planet they had left behind. Earth was a paradox, a place of both creation and destruction, beauty and danger. It had challenged them, frightened them, and ultimately changed them in ways they hadn't expected. Days later, Emily sat at her desk, typing up her latest article. Her piece focused on the abandoned factory and the mysterious disappearances, weaving together evidence from the journal and her own observations. Though she couldn't explain the glowing eyes or the strange distortions she had seen, she hinted at the possibility of something extraordinary lurking in the shadows. As she finished writing, she leaned back in her chair, staring out the window at the star-filled sky. A part of her wondered if the answers lay beyond Earth, if there were other worlds out there, just as complex and unpredictable as her own. She didn't know why, but she felt connected to the stars, as though they held secrets waiting to be uncovered. Far above Earth, the alien students settled back into their daily lives, their minds still filled with thoughts of the Deathworld they had visited. They shared their story with others, warning of Earth's dangers while marveling at its wonders. And though they had returned home, they knew their journey wasn't truly over. Earth had left its mark on them, just as it had on Emily Dawson. It was a reminder that no matter where you came from or where you were going, the universe was full of mysteries waiting to be explored. And sometimes, those mysteries could change you forever.